All right, we're back in session. The purpose of this meeting is a future land use map change and a rezone application. We'll go into a public hearing in a moment here. This is the process and the procedure that we'll follow. So we'll introduce ourselves here, and then we just stated the purpose. The process in which the things will happen is I'm going to give staff some time for comments, and then the applicant will have time for comments. We received any written comments besides what's in the packet?
I did not receive any.
Okay, and then we'll open it up for public comment, those for, those against, and those neutral. The rules of the public comments are all speakers must speak into the microphone and give their name and address. They'll come up and sit up here. All comments shall be addressed to the hearing body, which is the commissioners, be relevant to the hearing, and not be of a personal nature. There will be a 3-minute time limit. We will avoid repetitive comments. Unruly behavior is prohibited. I've never had to have somebody tased, but I've always kind of waited to do that. We'll give the closing rebuttal to the applicant, any additional staff comments, and then the board will ask questions. So, and then we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open the public hearing at this time.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Hal?
Real quickly, Commissioners, you have in your packet the petition to amend the comprehensive plan. You've had the opportunity to review that. I'll go over some highlights of that real quickly just for your information. And then there are also in your packet the findings, conclusions from the council with their recommendations. So real quickly, the applicant, Vic Conrad, representing the J.R. Simplot Company, is seeking to amend the Bannock County Comprehensive Plan for the purpose of changing one parcel of land and the north 80 acres of parcel RPR 385-3020501, total approximate acreage 239.91 acres, from the agricultural zone to the industrial zone on the comprehensive plan's future land use map. The recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, the council has broad discretion from the council, and they made their determination in a public hearing with a public comment in that particular meeting on the 20th of October. As stated, the applicant is Vic Conrad, 1099 Front Street, Boise, Idaho 83707, and the owner of the lands are J.R. Simplot Company, P.O. Box 27, Boise, Idaho 83707. The purpose of this request is for the Simplot Company to continue their ongoing operations due to the nature of some particular Native American issues with sensitive lands to the south in Power County. It has required that the Simplot Company come our direction into Bannock County in the purchase of lands, and now asking for that to happen. They are under some restrictive federal guidelines relative to their gypsum stacks that they need to basically remove and find a place suitable for the purpose of those gypsum stacks, and that is what this land will be used for. For your information, council made recommendation to approve the future land use map, and their findings are in your packet. If you have other questions for me, I'm open. If not, I am finished.
Okay, thank you. I didn't introduce ourselves. Go ahead and staff and...
Greg Gleason, Chief of Staff for the Commission.
Nancy Allen, Deputy Clerk.
Jeff Huff, Commissioner.
Ernie Moser, Commissioner.
Terrell Tubby, Commissioner.
Brian Trammell, Chief Civil Deputy Prosecutor.
Amy Mulford, Civil Specialist.
Okay. Applicant.
Thank you. I am not Vic Conrad. This is Vic Conrad.
You get to be Vic Conrad for right now, is what you're saying?
I do. My name is Dave Gardner. I've lived here in Pocatello for 26 years. I'm with the Holly Troxel Law Firm here in town. I represent Vic Conrad in this matter. Commissioners, we do request the amendment to the flume as well as the rezone. Vic is here. He's the Director of Land, Water, and Asset Recovery for Simplot. I'm also joined by Tricia Rave, who is the Don Plant Manager, Rick Phillips, who is with Public Affairs, and Alan Prouty, who is our Vice President of Environmental and Regulatory Affairs. We also have some other people here, and basically, if you have any questions, I'm sure we have someone here who will answer it. I have one presentation that really incorporates both the Flume Amendment and the rezone, and for the sake of just doing it once, I just prefer to aggregate my time between those two and just present once on both issues, and then we can have some additional time at the end.
We appreciate that.
So, and I don't, is there a, can someone hit the next slide for me? Awesome. So, the J.R. Simplot Company, and it's important, we're making a record here. So I know that you are aware of a lot of the staff recommendations, but we are making a record, and it's important for us to present this information for the purpose of the record. The J.R. Simplot Company built and began operation of a fertilizer manufacturing facility northwest of Pocatello in 1944. This facility, known as the Don Plant, utilizes phosphate ore from local sources to make phosphoric acid, which is the building block of both dry and liquid phosphate fertilizers. Today, the region is still an important contributor to the phosphate market, and it supplies approximately 22% of the nation's phosphate, as well as about 4% of the world's phosphate. There are approximately 365 employees at the Don Plant and 21 employees at the Frontier Building, an associated facility. Simplot estimates that 91% of these employees reside in Bannock and Powell counties. Simplot paid a little over $3.9 million in real property and personal property tax in 2018. Of that total, approximately 76% was paid in Powell County, 22% was paid in Caribou County, and less than 1% in Bannock County. With this change, those numbers will probably change.
Looking forward to that.
Yes. Now, Simplot paid a little over $3.9 million in real property and personal property tax in 2018. Of that, 76%, or excuse me, the actual 2019 base and excise sales tax distribution was slightly over $1.2 million for Bannock County. Okay. If I go to the next slide. In 2020, Simplot exchanged land with the federal government and acquired approximately 714 acres and conveyed to the BLM a little over 826 acres. And that's the Black Rock area that's south of town. Simplot took title to the land outlined on this slide on September 17th of 2020. Or excuse me, on December 17th of 2020. Next slide, please. So after the exchange, Simplot or its affiliates owns what is shown in green. The map also shows the areas of the requested Flume Amendment as well as the proposed rezone. And as you will note, Simplot or its affiliates now own all lands adjacent to these parcels that we request the change. Now, next slide, please. So the requested amendment and rezone meet all the requirements of the policies and objectives for land use. First, if these requests are not approved, operational expenditures would total only $10 million and would include 386 employees. And this benefit would be short-lived at the Don Plant because it would shortly be required to reduce or shutter operations. Alternatively, if approved, the Don Plant and its associated facilities would support 1,704 jobs, $86.5 million in labor income, $519.3 million in regional output, and $132.4 million in contributions to the gross state product annually. Additionally, there would be a $16.5 million in state and local tax revenue that would be contributed to the region. Therefore, the total economic impact, if approved, is approximately 2 times higher than if not approved. So it's an important request that we are making, clearly, for this region. As far as the other factors, the nearest non-industrial use or commercial use is over 2,640 feet away. All adjacent lands are already marked industrial on the current flume, and no additional county services are required. Simplot provides all of their services for this property. Finally, no land has any this land has no viable agricultural or commercial use due to the terrain and lack of water rights. Next slide, please. So, policy 1.52 requires this board to ensure that land use actions, decisions, and regulations align with the county's responsibility to protect public health, safety, and welfare. We have submitted studies which document the past improvements made to the current gyp stack and how those improvements have resulted in a reciprocal improvement to the environment. And those studies have been submitted in our application. The expansion of the gyp stack will include lining of the stack, which is a proven technology already implemented to safeguard the environment. Next slide, please. Any increase to the stack will also require extensive review from both the EPA and the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. So any changes that are made will have to undergo that process with both of those agencies. Next slide, please. Further, Simplot is already subject to all of these orders, agreements, and requirements. So the environment will definitely be cared for, protected, and watched over. Next slide, please. Now, due to the distance and terrain, there should be little, if any, well, there is little, if any, visual impact on the adjacent properties. What this slide shows is the McCardle property, which is the closest non-commercial property, and you don't see any elevation of the gyp stack until 2045. And you can see it just slightly arising above the existing landscape. The next slide, please. Shows you 2085, and that's the max that it will be right there. And that's from the McCardle property.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification. You're saying the fine gray line over the horizon is what you're referring to as the visual object?
Correct, the dark black area.
What's
Okay.
up here?
Okay.
All right.
Okay?
Go back to the, excuse me, could you go back to the previous slide? Okay, thank
So
you.
there it is in 2045.
Yep.
And then next slide, 2085.
Okay.
That's how
thank
much it'll grow.
you. Thank you.
And then the next slide, this is from the Hoku property. And you can see just the black
Yep.
above the landscape there. That's 2045. And then 2085, very little change. And it's basically max for size for that area. Next slide, please. So consistent with Objective 1.3, this change collaborates with surrounding governments as well as others for compatible use and beneficial development. And we've received letters of support from all of these groups, and those letters are in the packet of materials. Next slide, please. Now, the federal government approved this exchange in August of 2020 with title passing in December of 2020. The Shoshone-Bannock tribes filed a lawsuit on December 5th, 2020 against the federal government, basically contesting the land exchange, okay? Now, Simplot is requesting the amendment and rezone now because it is subject to various deadlines relating to the Don plant. In order to keep that plant going, we need this to ensure the process continues. Should the tribes prevail in the litigation, which we do not believe they will, but should they prevail, there would be no adverse effect on the county. This land would simply revert back to the federal government, and any amendment and rezone would be invalid. All right. Any questions?
No, at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, next we have Pat. You requested to
I'm
speak?
just here for information.
Oh, okay, okay. That was a sign-up sheet to come and present, so,
They've covered what I was concerned about,
okay, all right, thank you.
and Mr. Schultz.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, any further comments from staff? Questions?
No. Mr. Chairman, I move to close the public hearing.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Decisions?
So again, this comes back to us with everything. While I appreciate taxes, I appreciate everything. It comes back to a land use issue. Everybody wants to talk about private property rights. Businesses and corporations, according to the Supreme Court, have private property rights. You have a piece of property that does not fit the categorization of agricultural lands, and it would need to be rezoned. I believe that it is within the right of the property owner, which is the Simplot Corporation, to actually ask for that. They've demonstrated that there is no adverse effects, as they are the property owners around the indicated property that would be rezoned. With that being said, as a property issue, the regulatory issues fall to the state and they fall to DEQ. The county is not a regulatory agency. There are some certain things in that how I believe we would have to follow for just runoff and those things that we're required as a county anytime permits for excavation and those things are done, but I'm pretty sure that that's pretty much within the norm that Simplot Corporation has already done. So from my perspective, Mr. Chairman, I would say that it is within the applicant's right to request the rezone, and I believe it is correct that we do support and move this rezone forward.
Any further comments?
No, to the best of my knowledge, Simplot has always been a very good neighbor, and I believe that they do their homework and also appreciate their environmental requirements they will have to meet to be there. So I'm comfortable with that. My concern was the visual nature of it, which you addressed, which I think is appropriate. So I'm satisfied as well.
I call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the future land use map amendment as presented.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, with that being said, I would move at this time to approve the rezone application due to the passage of the future land use map, that we approve the rezone application as presented.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. With that being said, we are adjourned.